My name's Patrick Foley and this is my review for Snare for UK Film Review. This is a short horror film set deep in a mysterious forest which follows a group of free hunters who are all part of the same family. You've got the father, Adrian, who is this sort of domineering survivalist figure. You've got his daughter, Harriet, who is quite hardened and attuned to the ideals he preaches. But you've also got James, his son, who is a little softer, a little bit less ruthless, less of a sort of killing machine. And he and his father don't necessarily see eye to eye on everything. These family dynamics play out amidst a terrifying dilemma for the family when they start to realise the forest itself seems to be hunting them down. These sort of mysterious branches and roots fling up from the ground itself and try and capture them. And it leads to a confrontation between members of the family that puts a really difficult decision in the hands of all of them. So Snare is very sort of stylized as a sort of folky, earthy, gothic horror film set in a modern setting in a forest. The sense that it is man versus the environment comes through really strongly. There's obviously a lot of heavy implications on that front. I thought the imagery of the roots sort of entangling the arms and the wrists of the cast members as action ramps up is a really sort of disturbing and horrifying one. There's something just really visceral about being entrapped by nature itself, and that sense that something natural has gripped its branches into you and is tying you down, that I think just is naturally disturbing to us. The dynamics that play out amongst the family also add an emotional connection to the level of danger that we see. On the surface, it feels not the most original sort of conflict between them. You've got the kind of domineering father who's just a bit of a hard ass, treats his son James like dirt, but is much more doting over his daughter, who is more ruthless, ironically, but that's kind of what endears her to him. It does feel like there's certain scenes that have been present in a lot of media over the last couple of years, primarily a sort of father figure expecting his son to commit some sort of act of execution against a helpless adversary. I feel like this is something we've seen in Game of Thrones and things like Peacemaker and The Last of Us recently. It's very commonly used now to kind of draw a line between the evil father and the sympathetic son. But it is taken into more interesting places, and there are some unexpected little intricacies thrown in there by the director and the writer, as well as the cast, who show that there is some layers of depth to these characters. I think these are some of the best scenes in the film, really, where it's using that kind of an element of mystery to create a threat against the cast and against the characters. The fear of the unknown, the fear of the supernatural as well as the natural, really sort of drives home and blows up this dynamic that's existed between the characters. The film does sort of steer into a more supernatural, gothic-y, traditional horror sense later on in the sort of second half, and I didn't necessarily think it was for the better. I think the best parts of the film where it's unexplained and where you don't really know what form the threat takes is often the case in horror, that once you sort of reveal the villain or reveal the real enemy behind all the events that you see happening and playing out, it sometimes actually dampens the fear and the terror of what the characters are being faced with. Without giving too much away, this film does end up kind of careering into much more traditional and overplayed territory when it comes to things like brainwashing and taking control of someone. And whilst it works fine for the story and for the outcome of the events, I just thought it was a little bit cookie cutter, a little bit basic, and a little bit of a step down for a film that otherwise stays firmly in some really interesting territory. On the whole, I enjoyed Snare. I'd recommend Snare. I think it looks great. It's got a great atmospheric vibe to it, a really sort of creepy sense of discomfort in a natural environment. It does lose its way a little bit towards the end and ends on a much more expected and traditional note, but for the build up to that moment, it's worth it alone. I expect this one will definitely ensnare some positive reviews when it is released.